The billionaire was dying in booth 7. Blood dripped from his mouth onto the table. His hands clawed at his chest, gasping for air. Around him, people froze, terrified, useless. But Grace didn't freeze. The waitress everyone ignored suddenly moved like a different person. Her hands found his pulse. Her voice turned sharp, commanding. Call 911. Tell them internal bleeding. Pancreatic failure. Move. Now. His assistant stared at her. How do you know? Grace didn't answer. She was too busy saving the man who destroyed her life. The dying billionaire's name was Jonathan Whitmore, worth $4 billion. Built his fortune on cancer treatments that saved thousands of lives. What he didn't know, the waitress saving him right now. She was the doctor who invented those treatments. The brilliant researcher he'd erased from history. The ghost whose stolen work made him a hero. What she didn't know, he had 29 days left to live. 29 days to discover the truth about the woman pouring his coffee. This is the story of what happens when your victim becomes your savior. When justice and mercy collide in a truck stop diner. When a dying man meets the ghost of his greatest sin. Before we go further, answer this. Would you save someone who ruined your life? Drop your gut reaction below. Be honest. Because Grace made a choice in that moment that changed everything. And I need you to remember what you would do. Because by the end of the story, you might see it differently. Subscribe now. Because the next 29 days will break your heart and put it back together in ways you never expected. 6 weeks earlier, Grace Turner's alarm screamed at 4:47 a.m. She silenced it before it could wake Lily in the next room. Her phone showed the number that haunted her. $347.18. That's what stood between her and homelessness. Rent was due in 4 days. $900 she didn't have. The Maple Grove Diner opened at 5:30. Grace had the double shift marked on the schedule. 14 hours on her feet for maybe $120 in tips if she was lucky. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams. Johnny Cash crooned from the jukebox that only played 3 songs anymore. Hurt was stuck on repeat, which felt appropriate. The red vinyl booths were cracked, held together with duct tape. Early November snow pressed against the windows, turning Ashford, Montana into a postcard nobody wanted to send. Grace tied her apron, checked her section, started the morning ritual she could do in her sleep. Table 4, 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, coffee black. Table 7, short stack, extra syrup, orange juice. Table 2, oatmeal, no sugar coffee with cream. 47 orders memorized by 9 a.m. She never wrote anything down. Never needed to. Old Joe, the trucker, sat at the counter like always. Morning, Gracie. You look tired. I'm fine, Joe. She poured his coffee before he asked. 3 sugars, heavy cream. Refill every 12 minutes. Emma, the teenage waitress, fumbled with a tray. Grace steadied it without looking, her hands moving with the kind of precision that looked automatic, but wasn't. It was trained, surgical. A customer at table 9 struggled with his pill organizer, trying to read the labels. Grace glanced over. Sir, you're taking those together? The blood thinner and the anti-inflammatory? You should space them 4 hours apart. He blinked. How'd you? My mom took the same medications. The lie came easy now. Emma watched Grace like she was magic. How do you know everything? Grace smiled empty. You learn things. Her keychain hung from her apron pocket. 2 keys she never talked about. One to a storage unit she paid $40 a month to keep locked. One to a locket around her neck she never opened. Inside that locket, a medical license with her photo, Dr. Grace Turner, Johns Hopkins University. Lily's medical bills sat in a drawer at home. $127,000 from last year's emergency surgery. Bills she'd never pay on a waitress salary. Bills that existed because she couldn't be a doctor anymore. For 18 months, this diner had been her sanctuary from a past she couldn't outrun. But sanctuary isn't the same as safety. And today, her past was about to walk through the door. The black Mercedes looked wrong parked outside the Maple Grove diner. Too expensive, too clean, too out of place. Grace noticed it first. Then the man who stepped out. He moved carefully, like every step cost him something. Expensive coat, understated but clearly tailored. Gray at his temples, gaunt in a way that spoke of illness, not diet. Behind him, a younger man in a suit emerged, sharp-eyed, protective, scanning the diner like it might attack them. "Mr. Whitmore, there's a proper restaurant 7 miles south. This one's fine, Marcus." The older man's voice carried authority, softened by exhaustion. They pushed through the door. The bell chimed. Grace's hands went cold. She knew that face. She'd know it anywhere. Jonathan Whitmore walked past her like she was furniture. Why wouldn't he? Billionaires don't memorize the faces of people they destroy. Emma rushed over, eyes wide. "Grace, do you know who that is?" Her whisper barely qualified as quiet. "That's Jonathan Whitmore." Like the Jonathan Whitmore. Forbes list. MedTech innovations. He's worth like billions. "I know." Grace's voice came out steady. Years of practice, hiding. Jonathan chose booth 7, the corner booth with the ripped vinyl seat. He lowered himself slowly, carefully. One hand pressed his side. Pain management. Grace recognized the tells. The way he breathed through his nose. The tension in his jaw. His watch caught the fluorescent light. A Patek Philippe. Probably worth more than Grace would earn in 5 years. But it hung loose on a wrist that had lost weight recently. Rapidly. Marcus, the assistant, sat across from him, still scanning the room like threats might emerge from the pie case. Grace forced her feet to move. Professional. Invisible. Survive. "Welcome to Maple Grove. What can I get you?" Jonathan looked up. Their eyes met. 3 seconds. That's how long the moment lasted. 3 seconds where Grace's past and present collided in a truck stop diner in Montana. She waited for recognition, for his eyes to widen, for him to remember. Nothing. He looked at her the way everyone looked at waitresses. Present, but not really seen. Cough. Black. And the meatloaf special, please. His voice was kind. That somehow made it worse. An elderly woman struggled with the door behind them. Jonathan stood, wincing as he did, and held it open for her. "After you, ma'am." She smiled, grateful. Such a gentleman. Marcus ordered the same, barely looking at Grace. Already on his phone, guarding his boss from the world. Grace wrote down their orders, even though she didn't need to. Her hands needed something to do, or they'd shake. Jonathan Whitmore, net worth $4.2 billion. Founder of MedTech Innovations, the company revolutionizing cancer treatment. Featured in Time magazine as the man who conquered cancer. Philanthropist, visionary, hero. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Grace could see it in the jaundice yellowing his eyes, the way his skin hung loose, the careful movements of someone managing pain every waking moment. The man who built an empire on her stolen research was sitting in her section, ordering comfort food, like a penitent seeking salvation. Grace walked to the kitchen, order ticket in hand. She had 4 days until rent was due, 29 days until Jonathan Whitmore died, and 18 months of hiding that just ended the moment he walked through her door. Jonathan Whitmore watched the waitress work. He'd come to small-town Montana looking for something. Authenticity, maybe. Real people living real lives, uncomplicated by money and power. His therapist called it his redemption tour. Find meaning before the cancer took him. But this waitress was different. She moved through the diner like water, Efficient, precise, never wasted motion. Carried 4 plates balanced perfectly. Remembered every customer's name, their usual orders, asked about their kids and their jobs like she actually cared. When she delivered his meatloaf, she set it down with both hands, perfectly aligned. No spills, no hesitation. Meatloaf, hold the onions, extra gravy on the side, coffee refilled. She'd remembered modifications he'd given once, 20 minutes ago. Jonathan smiled. You're very good at this. Ever thought about management? You have organizational skills that... Grace's jaw tightened. Just for a second. Barely noticeable. Inside her head, 2 voices screamed at each other. Voice 1, the survivor. Smile. Nod. Stay invisible. Tips pay rent. Conflict costs everything. Voice 2, the woman he erased. He doesn't get to patronize you. He doesn't get to assess your potential when he stole your actual career. He doesn't get to... I appreciate that. Her voice came out neutral, professional. Will there be anything else? But her eyes betrayed her. They tracked down to his hand pressing his abdomen, to the yellow tint creeping into his sclera, to the way he held himself. The words escaped before she could stop them. How long since your last scan? The air in the diner changed. Jonathan's smile faltered. Excuse me. Grace's heart hammered. Stupid, stupid. You're holding your side like my mother. She had pancreatic cancer. I recognize the signs. Marcus looked up from his phone, eyes sharp, suspicious. Jonathan studied her now, really seeing her for the first time. I'm sorry about your mother, and you're observant. It's nothing. Grace retreated to the coffee station, hands shaking. She was pouring refills for table 4 when Jonathan's phone rang. He answered, and his voice dropped into business mode. Yes, I got the briefing. The Phase 3 trial results. Grace's hands stopped moving. Excellent. The immunotherapy protocol is performing exactly as projected. We're looking at FDA approval by spring. Immunotherapy protocol. Her research, her 12 years of work that she'd poured her soul into, believing she was saving lives. She was, just not with her name attached. Jonathan continued, oblivious. Tell Dr. Chen I want a full data set. This treatment will be my legacy. The Turner protocol, he paused. No, the MedTech protocol. Cleaner branding. They'd even stolen her name, erased it, replaced it. Grace's vision tunneled. Her pulse roared in her ears. Marcus was watching her. She felt his eyes tracking her reaction. She forced herself to move, to breathe, to pour coffee like she hadn't just heard her entire life's work credited to the man who destroyed her. 3 years ago, Grace had been someone else entirely. Dr. Grace Turner, Johns Hopkins University Hospital, the rising star in oncology research. Her lab, her team, her breakthrough work on personalized cancer immunotherapy. She'd combined checkpoint inhibitors with custom cancer vaccines, creating a protocol that turned patients' own immune systems into precision weapons. The results were extraordinary. Remission rates that made headlines. Patients who'd been given months now had years. Then she got pregnant with Lily, took maternity leave, came back to find her research stolen. Dr. Richard Thornton, her department head, had presented her work as his own, published under his name, sold the patent to MedTech Innovations for $50 million. When Grace threatened to expose him, he became systematic in his destruction. Evidence disappeared. Lab notes vanished. Colleagues suddenly remembered that Dr. Thornton had guided her research, that she'd been derivative, not innovative, that she'd taken credit for departmental work. He filed ethics complaints, doctored emails, built a paper trail of lies. Grace fought back. Nobody believed her. A young female researcher accusing a powerful department head, she became the problem, the troublemaker, the unstable woman making wild accusations. Her medical license was suspended pending investigation. Her reputation destroyed. Single motherhood and scandal didn't leave room for defending herself. She ran, took Lily and disappeared into the American heartland, became invisible. A waitress nobody looked at twice. For 18 months, she'd been safe in her obscurity. Until today, Jonathan finished his call, left $40 for an $18 meal, then pulled out his checkbook. When Grace cleared the table, she found $500 and a handwritten note. For noticing what doctors miss. You have a gift. Grace stared at the money. Her rent, Lily's prescription refills, groceries for 2 weeks, blood money, built on her stolen work, given back to her like charity. She folded the check with trembling hands and wondered if he'd recognize his gift when she made him pay for everything he'd taken. Grace's shift ended at 9 p.m., 14 hours on her feet, $137 in tips, including Jonathan Whitmore's $500. She stood in the diner parking lot, check in hand, snow falling soft around her. She could rip it up, send a message, keep her dignity. Lily's inhaler cost $60. Rent was 4 days away. Pride didn't pay for survival. Grace folded the check into her wallet. Emma pushed through the diner door, breath fogging in the cold air. Grace, that guy left you $500. Oh my God, what'd you do, save his life? Not yet, Grace thought. Just good service. He was, like, really watching you. It was kind of intense. Emma's eyes were bright with teenage imagination. Maybe he'll come back. Maybe he's looking for. He's a customer, Emma. Nothing more. Grace climbed into her 15-year-old Honda. The engine coughed before starting. Get home safe. The drive to her apartment took 12 minutes. Lily was asleep on the couch, homework scattered around her. Babysitter on her phone. Grace paid Mrs. Chin $20. Money she hadn't wanted to spend but had to. Single mothers didn't get flexibility. After Mrs. Chin left, Grace opened her laptop. She typed, Jonathan Whitmore MedTech Cancer. 500 articles loaded. Forbes profiles. TED Talks. The face of cancer innovation. The billionaire who cares. Philanthropy awards. Hospital wings bearing his name. She clicked deeper. Jonathan Whitmore's 30-day redemption tour. Article dated 1 week ago. He'd announced his terminal diagnosis publicly, pledged to spend his final month reconnecting with real America, seeking wisdom from ordinary people. Ordinary people, like the waitress he'd patronized for noticing symptoms. She found more. His daughter Rachel Whitmore, 35, corporate attorney, currently fighting 3 lawsuits against her father's company. Estranged. Hadn't spoken to him in 2 years, according to gossip columns. Then Grace found what made her hands stop moving. MedTech's breakthrough. The Turner Protocol saves thousands. Her name, still attached, but in the article, originally developed by MedTech's research division under Dr. Richard Thornton, the Turner Protocol represents. They'd kept her name like a trophy, divorced it from her identity, made Turner a brand, not a person. The treatment was worth billions now, FDA approved, insurance covered, saving 2,847 lives at last count. Her work, her name, his empire, and he was dying anyway. Pancreatic cancer didn't care about net worth. Karma was already handling him. So why did her chest feel hollow? Why wasn't his suffering enough? Because people still believed he was a hero. Because her daughter would grow up never knowing her mother had saved thousands of lives. Because Grace Turner had been erased from history while Jonathan Whitmore got sainthood. She closed the laptop, walked to her bedroom closet, moved the winter coats aside, pulled out a cardboard box she hadn't opened in 6 months. The key from her keychain, the storage unit key, felt heavy in her hand. Tomorrow she'd drive to the unit, pull the files she'd been maintaining for 3 years. Her original research journals, the dated lab notes, the email chains proving the timeline, the evidence she collected obsessively, not knowing why, just knowing she couldn't let the truth disappear completely. She didn't know what she'd do with it yet, but Jonathan Whitmore was in her town, in her diner, leaving $500 tips and talking about redemption. Maybe fate was giving her a chance. Maybe karma needed help finishing its work. Grace locked the box away, kissed Lily's forehead, lay in bed staring at the ceiling until 3 a.m., and wondered if saving a dying man's soul counted as mercy or revenge. Grace just made a choice that will change everything. She's gathering evidence against a dying man, documentation that could destroy his legacy in the final month of his life. Before we continue, I need you to decide something. Is justice still justice when your enemy is already being punished by fate? If someone stole your life's work but cancer is killing them anyway, do you let it go? Or do you make sure they know what they took before they die? Drop your honest answer below, because here's what happens next. Jonathan Whitmore returns to that diner tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after. For reasons Grace doesn't understand yet, he keeps coming back. And every conversation, every interaction, will force both of them to confront impossible questions about redemption, forgiveness, and whether truth matters when time is running out. Subscribe right now, because what unfolds over the next 29 days will test both of them in ways neither expected. And I promise you, the moment Grace decides what to do with that evidence, it will break your heart. Jonathan Whitmore became a regular. Every day for a week, the black Mercedes appeared outside Maple Grove Diner. Every day, Jonathan requested Grace's section. Every day, she served him while her mind cataloged everything. Day 1, he ordered meatloaf again, took a call about quarterly earnings, mentioned the Turner Protocol 3 times. Grace's hands didn't shake when she refilled his coffee. Day 2, a briefcase full of papers, legal documents. She caught glimpses when clearing plates, med tech acquisition histories, patent filings, dates that matched her timeline. Day 3. Jonathan left his leather journal on the table when he went to the restroom. Grace had 47 seconds. Her phone camera captured 6 pages. Shaking hands, racing heart, ears straining for footsteps. The entries were confessions. Bought Tech Vision for $200 million. Due diligence was rushed. Found accounting irregularities after. Too late to back out. 400 jobs on the line. Did I save them or trap them? Margaret would be ashamed of who I became. Built an empire. Lost my family. What's the point of conquering cancer if you die alone? Names she didn't recognize. Guilt about cutting corners in business deals. Regrets about his daughter. But nothing about stolen research. Nothing about Grace Turner or Richard Thornton. He didn't know. The man who destroyed her life had no idea he'd done it. Day 5 brought someone new. Dr. Sarachan walked through the diner door like she owned the oxygen. 50-something, sharp eyes, expensive coat. She slid into Jonathan's booth without asking. Grace poured coffee. Turned invisible, listened. Jonathan, we need to talk about the immunotherapy protocol. It's performing beautifully, Sarah. FDA approval is... That's not what I mean. Sarah's voice dropped. I've been reviewing the acquisition documents. The original research from Johns Hopkins. Something doesn't add up. Grace's hand froze over the coffee pot. Richard Thornton vetted everything, Jonathan said. You know how thorough he is? That's what worries me. If anyone ever proves we didn't develop that treatment in-house, if there's any question about intellectual property ownership, Jonathan, your entire legacy could collapse. The paperwork is solid. Paperwork can be fabricated. Sarah leaned forward. I'm asking as your friend and your chief medical officer. Are you absolutely certain we own that research? Richard assured me personally. I trust him. Grace turned away before they could see her face. Thornton. Her destroyer was the connection linking her to Jonathan. And Jonathan trusted him completely. The man who stole her life was the same man Jonathan called friend. Jonathan couldn't stop thinking about the waitress. Not romantically. He was dying, and attraction felt like a luxury he'd surrendered months ago. This was something deeper. Something that nagged at the edges of his consciousness like a forgotten name. If you could go back and undo one mistake, he asked her on day 6, knowing it would erase good things that came after, would you? Grace paused, coffee pot suspended midair. That's a complicated question. I'm a complicated person with limited time. Jonathan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Humor me. I think. Grace chose her words carefully. I think we don't get to cherry-pick consequences. Every choice creates ripples. You can't undo the bad without losing the good. So maybe the question isn't whether you'd undo it, but whether you take responsibility for it. Jonathan stared at her. Waitresses in Montana weren't supposed to sound like philosophy professors. That night, he asked Marcus to run a background check. The report came back thin. Grace Turner, 34, Johns Hopkins dropout, single mother. Employed at Maple Grove Diner 18 months. No criminal record, nothing notable. Dropout. Jonathan frowned at the word. Johns Hopkins doesn't just let anyone in. Maybe she couldn't afford to finish, Marcus suggested. But something didn't fit. The way she moved, precise, controlled. The way she'd noticed his symptoms before his own doctors flagged them. The vocabulary she used when she thought no one was paying attention. Grace Turner was hiding something, or hiding from something. Sarah visited him again on day 7. You're obsessed with that waitress, she said flatly. I'm intrigued by authentic people. Jonathan sipped his coffee. Burnt, bitter, real. Everyone in my world wants something from me. Money, access, legacy, association. She just serves coffee. Treats me like anyone else. She's not a philosopher, Jonathan. She's a person trying to survive. Sarah's expression softened. You're dying. I get it. You want to believe in authentic human connection before you go. But stop playing poverty tourist and actually talk to her like a human being. Ask her real questions. Listen to real answers. I'm trying to know. I'm mattered, Sarah. Beyond the money. Then stop looking for meaning in diners and start looking at what you actually built. Your legacy. But that was the problem, wasn't it? Jonathan thought about his late wife, Margaret, constantly now. Cancer researcher. Brilliant. Passionate about saving lives. She died 12 years ago from pancreatic cancer. The same disease eating him alive now. He'd built MedTech's entire cancer division in her memory, trying to save others from what he couldn't save her from. But Margaret had died disappointed in him, disappointed in who he'd become. The ruthless businessman who valued profits over people. The absent husband who worked 80-hour weeks building an empire while she fought tumors alone. His daughter Rachel wouldn't visit, wouldn't answer his calls. 29 days left to live, and his own child had written him off. He'd built everything and had no one to leave it to who understood its cost. Maybe that's why the waitress haunted him. Grace Turner looked at him and saw a customer, not a monument. Treated him like he was ordinary. For a man who'd spent his life proving he was extraordinary. Ordinary felt like grace he didn't deserve. What Jonathan didn't know yet, Grace Turner wasn't looking for his redemption. She was documenting his sins. The invitation surprised Grace. I'd like to thank you properly, Jonathan said on day 8. Dinner. The restaurant on Main Street. Billionaire? Tomorrow evening. My treat. Call it appreciation for tolerating a dying man's philosophical questions. Grace's instinct screamed no. But her curiosity whispered yes. Why? Because you're interesting. Because I have limited time and I'd rather spend it with people who think than people who flatter. Jonathan's smile was genuine. 7 p.m.? Grace agreed before she could talk herself out of it. Billionaire was Ashford's attempt at upscale. White tablecloths, candles, wine list with actual vintages. Grace wore the only dress she owned that wasn't for waitressing. Jonathan wore a suit that cost more than her car. The dinner started cordially. Tell me about yourself, Jonathan said. Real things, not resume bullets. Grace gave him carefully edited truths. Montana, the diner. She talked about her daughter's brilliance, her love of science, her questions about the universe. She sounds like her mother, Jonathan observed. She's better than her mother. She still believes genius is enough. And Grace's smile was sharp. I learned genius needs the right circumstances to survive. Jonathan was about to respond when the restaurant door opened. Rachel Whitmore entered like a corporate assassin. Tailored suit, sharp eyes, fury barely contained. She spotted them immediately, crossed the restaurant in 8 angry strides. Dad, what the hell are you doing? Jonathan's face went pale. Rachel, Marcus called me. Said you've been fixated on a waitress for a week. That you're having private dinners now. Rachel's eyes cut to Grace like scalpels. How much is he paying you? Grace kept her voice level. He's paying for dinner. That's all. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a lonely dying billionaire being manipulated by someone who saw an opportunity. Rachel pulled out her phone. Let me make this easy. Name your price. I'll double whatever he's promised you to go away. Jonathan stood. Rachel, that's completely. She's not after my money, he said. And Grace heard the patronizing edge immediately. She's just a kind person doing her best. Just, that word again, just a waitress. Just ordinary. Just invisible. Grace set down her fork with deliberate precision. When she spoke, her voice was steel wrapped in silk. I'm just a waitress the same way your father is just a businessman. We both know there's more to people than their current circumstances, don't we? Rachel's laugh was acid. And what hidden depths do you have? Let me guess. You're putting yourself through school? You're a struggling artist? Grace had a choice in this moment. She could expose everything, drop the bomb that would destroy Jonathan's final days and Rachel's carefully protected legacy. Tell them exactly who she was and what they'd taken. Or she could give them just enough truth to crack their assumptions. I have a PhD in molecular biology, Grace said calmly. I worked in oncology research before life changed. I specialized in immunotherapy protocols combining checkpoint inhibitors with personalized cancer vaccines. The table went silent. Your father's cancer is further progressed than he's telling you. He has weeks, not months. The jaundice indicates liver involvement. The way he holds his abdomen suggests the tumor has grown beyond surgical margins. And the experimental treatment he's considering, the one med tech is developing, won't work given his current tumor markers. The protocol requires functional T-cell response. His immune system is too compromised. Rachel's face drained of color. Jonathan stared at Grace like she'd materialized from another dimension. How do you, he whispered. I notice because I'm trained to notice. Grace stood, placed her napkin on the table. I'm sorry your father is dying. I'm sorry your relationship is broken. But don't ever assume you understand someone's depths based on where they work. She looked at Jonathan. Thank you for dinner. Good luck with everything. Grace walked toward the door with as much dignity as she could summon. Behind her, she heard the restaurant owner, Mrs. Castellano, who knew Grace, who'd watched her struggle, who'd hired her daughter for summer dishwashing, confront Rachel. That woman has more grace than you'll ever understand, young lady. More education than you. More strength than your father. And she serves coffee because life is cruel, not because she's less than you. Grace pushed through the door into cold November air. She made it to her car before her hands started shaking. Made it halfway home before tears blurred the highway. Dr. Turner. Jonathan had called her 3 years ago, before the world ended, before Thornton stole everything, before invisibility became survival. Hearing him call her nothing tonight, just a kind person, had ripped open wounds she thought were scarred. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring. It buzzed again. Text message. Please, I need to understand. Who are you really? Jonathan. Grace typed back. Someone you've already forgotten, Mr. Whitmore. Don't worry. Most powerful men never remember the people they step on climbing up. She blocked the number, drove home to her daughter, and wondered if exposing truth to a dying man counted as justice or just cruelty with better branding. The lawsuit threat arrived 3 days later. Grace stood in the diner owner's office, hands trembling, reading Rachel Whitmore's attorney's letter. Harassment, stalking, inappropriate medical advice without a license, emotional distress. Grace, I don't want to do this. Her boss, Frank, who'd hired her when no one else would, looked miserable. But they're threatening to sue the diner. I have to suspend you pending investigation. Frank, I believe you, but I have 3 kids and a mortgage. I can't fight billionaire lawyers. Grace was suspended. 0 income. Rent was already past due. $900 she didn't have. Lily's prescription needed refilling $60. Groceries, $80. Her bank account, $47.33. The math didn't work. Emma cried when she heard. Old Joe offered her money she couldn't accept. Her few friends in town asked careful questions that revealed their doubt. Why would a billionaire care about you? Are you sure you didn't misunderstand? Maybe you should just apologize? Nobody believed her story. Why would they? Brilliant doctor versus truck stop waitress. Which version sounded real? Grace sat in her apartment at 2 a.m., laptop open, staring at the evidence files. She could send them to the media, destroy Jonathan's final days, expose MedTech, burn it all down. But it would make her the villain, the bitter woman attacking a dying man seeking redemption, the crazy stalker who wouldn't let go. And Lily would see her mother become what Grace had been running from, someone who let anger consume everything. Grace closed the laptop, wondered if survival meant letting the powerful win. Meanwhile, 1,200 miles away, Jonathan collapsed in his Silicon Valley home. Acute pancreatitis. Ambulance. Hospital. IVs and monitors and the smell of antiseptic that reminded him of Margaret dying in rooms just like this. From his hospital bed, morphine making the world soft around the edges, Jonathan called Marcus. Everything on Grace Turner, not surface level. Deep background. Medical school records, thesis papers, employment history, everything. Sir, the doctor said you need rest. I have days, Marcus. Maybe weeks. I don't have time for rest. Jonathan's voice cracked. That woman knew things. Saw things. She called me Mr. Whitmore, like I was someone she'd met before and dismissed. Find out who she really is. Marcus found everything. The file arrived via courier 2 days later. 63 pages that dismantled Jonathan's entire reality. Dr. Grace Turner, Johns Hopkins University Hospital, Oncology Research Division. Her thesis had been revolutionary, combining checkpoint inhibitors with personalized cancer vaccines, turning patients' immune systems into precision weapons against tumors. 12 years of work, breakthrough results, remission rates that made headlines. Then pregnancy, maternity leave with Lily. 3 months away from her lab, she returned to find her research stolen. Dr. Richard Thornton, her department head, her mentor, the man she trusted, had presented her work as his own, published papers under his name, filed patents, sold the entire protocol to MedTech Innovations for $50 million. When Grace threatened to expose him, Thornton became systematic in his destruction. Lab notes vanished. Digital files disappeared. Colleagues suddenly remembered that Thornton had guided her research, that she'd been derivative, not innovative, that she'd taken credit for departmental work. Ethics complaints appeared in her file, fabricated, but official. Emails were doctored showing her claiming credit for others' work. A paper trail of lies appeared from nowhere. Grace fought, hired lawyers she couldn't afford, presented her original notebooks, her dated files, her evidence. Nobody believed her. A junior researcher accusing a powerful department head, she became the problem, the troublemaker, the unstable woman making wild accusations. Her medical license was suspended pending investigation. Single mother, no income, reputation destroyed. She ran, took Lily, and disappeared into Montana. Became invisible. Survived. MedTech Innovations rebranded her research as the Turner Protocol, keeping her name but divorcing it from her identity, making Turner a brand, not a person. The treatment saved 2,847 lives in its first 3 years. Grace's name was on it. Grace's work powered it. Grace's genius made it possible. But Dr. Grace Turner didn't exist anymore. Just a waitress named Grace in a forgotten diner, serving coffee to the people who'd erased her. Marcus delivered the file to Jonathan's hospital room. Jonathan read it once, then again, then a third time, each word cutting deeper. The waitress who'd served him meatloaf had saved thousands of lives. The woman he'd patronized, "You're good at this, ever thought about management?" had built his flagship treatment. The kind person doing her best had her career destroyed by Richard Thornton, his friend, his executive VP, the man he trusted. Jonathan's empire was built on Grace Turner's stolen genius. His redemption story was her erasure. The cancer treatment bearing his name, funding his legacy, saving lives in his late wife's memory. All of it was blood money extracted from a brilliant woman he'd reduced to invisible. Jonathan closed the file, looked at the 4 in his arm, delivering medications Grace had probably helped develop, and realized that saving 2,847 lives meant nothing if he destroyed the one person who made it possible. He had 22 days left, not enough time to undo what he'd done, maybe enough time to start making it right. Lily found Grace crying in the kitchen at 3 a.m. "Mom." Grace wiped her eyes, tried to smile, failed. "Hey, baby, why are you awake? Why are you awake?" Lily sat down, 8 years old but wise beyond her years. "Is it the rent again?" Grace's heart broke. Her daughter shouldn't know about rent. Lily looked at the cardboard box on the table, the one from Grace's closet, filled with medical textbooks, research journals, a life Grace used to live. "Mom, why do you still have your doctor books?" I don't know, honey. You were a doctor, right? Before me?" "Yes." "And something bad happened?" Grace nodded, unable to speak. Lily touched her mother's hand. "Someone took your work. That's why we had to leave. That's why you're sad. How do you? I hear you crying sometimes. And I'm not stupid." Lily's eyes were fierce. "Why don't you fight back?" "Because I'm protecting you." "By hiding? By being scared?" Lily shook her head. "That's not protecting me, Mom. That's teaching me that bad people win." Grace stared at her daughter. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds came truth that shattered everything. She thought she was keeping Lily safe by staying invisible, but she was teaching her daughter that injustice was acceptable. that genius should hide, that power always wins. "You're right," Grace whispered. "You're absolutely right." Decision made. Grace opened her laptop, sent an email she never thought she'd send. "Dr. Chin, this is Dr. Grace Turner. We met briefly at Maple Grove Diner. I need to talk to you about the Turner Protocol and where it really came from. If your conscience is bothering you, I have proof." The reply came in 14 minutes. "I've been waiting for this email for 3 years. When can we meet?" Old Joe the trucker arrived at dawn when Grace called. She told him her story months ago during a slow shift. Needed to tell someone. Needed one person to believe her. "What do you need, Gracie?" "I need a witness. Someone who'll swear I'm telling the truth." "You've got me." Dr. Sarah Chun flew to Montana 2 days later. They met in Grace's apartment. The three of them plus Lily doing homework in the corner. Sarah carried a briefcase full of documents. "I started digging after my conversation with Jonathan. The acquisition paperwork for the Turner Protocol had inconsistencies. I found the original Johns Hopkins records. Your name, your research, the timeline proving Thornton stole it. Why are you helping me?" Grace asked. "Because I'm complicit. I knew something was wrong and I stayed silent because Jonathan trusted Thornton and I trusted Jonathan. But silence makes you guilty." Sarah's hand shook. "I'm chief medical officer. I should have audited that acquisition. I didn't, and you lost everything." They prepared the evidence package. Grace's original research notebooks with dated entries, digital files with her fingerprints in the metadata, emails proving the timeline, Medteca's acquisition documents, Sarah's internal audit showing the discrepancies. Grace's plan was simple. Confront Jonathan privately. Demand public credit restoration, medical license reinstatement, funding to return to research. Not revenge. Restoration. "He's back in town," Sarah said. "Checked himself out of the hospital against medical advice. Flew back yesterday." "Why?" "I don't know. Marcus won't say. But Jonathan told me. Urgent business that can't wait." Grace felt dread coil in her stomach. "He knows, doesn't he? He found out who I am." "Probably. Then why come back here?" Sarah met her eyes. "Maybe for the same reason you're finally ready to confront him. Because some things matter more than survival." Meanwhile, Jonathan Whitmore walked into MedTech headquarters in Silicon Valley, demanded an emergency meeting with Richard Thornton, confronted him with Grace's file, the evidence, the truth. Thornton was ready, had been ready for years. "That research was developed in my department, Jonathan. Dr. Turner was a junior researcher working under my supervision. Her work was derivative of departmental resources." "That's a lie. Prove it in court. I have documentation, witness statements, a paper trail 3 years deep." Thornton smiled. "If you pursue this, I'll bury MedTech in litigation. The Turner Protocol's patent will be challenged. FDA approval questioned. Your entire cancer division could collapse. Thousands of jobs lost. Your legacy becomes fraud." Jonathan stared at the man he'd called friend. "You destroyed her. I protected valuable research from being lost to an unstable employee. I did what was necessary. She was brilliant. She was a liability. And now she's irrelevant." Thornton leaned forward. "You have 3 weeks left to live, Jonathan. Do you really want to spend them destroying everything you built? Let the past stay buried." Jonathan had a choice. His legacy or the truth. His empire or Grace Turner's life. He walked out of Thornton's office, boarded a plane back to Montana, and prayed he had enough time left to choose correctly. Jonathan has 22 days left and an impossible choice. Expose the truth and destroy his legacy. Thousands lose jobs. His life's work becomes a lie. Stay silent and Grace remains erased. Invisible, voiceless, forgotten. Grace has evidence and nothing left to lose. She's ready to fight. But can she win against A billionaire's empire, even a dying one? Before the final confrontation, I need your prediction. Will Jonathan sacrifice his legacy for truth? Or will he protect the lie to preserve what he built? Drop your answer below, and make sure you're subscribed, because the next section contains 3 revelations that will reframe this entire story. You think you know who the villain is. You think you know how this ends. You're wrong about both. Hit that subscribe button now. We're about to enter the storm. Jonathan returned to the diner at 11 p.m. Closing time. Lights half dimmed. Empty except for Grace cleaning tables. She saw the Mercedes pull up, saw him walk through the door, knew immediately that everything had changed. We're closed, she said without looking at him. I know. Jonathan's voice was quiet. Raw. Dr. Turner. Or do you prefer Grace? Grace's hands stopped moving. She turned to face him. You know, I know everything. Jonathan held up a folder. Her life, documented, exposed. Johns Hopkins, the immunotherapy research, Thornton's theft, your medical license suspension, everything you lost. Good. Grace's voice was steel. Then we can skip the part where you play innocent. I didn't know, Jonathan said. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. I didn't know Thornton stole your research. I didn't know you existed. I paid $50 million for work I was told his department developed, and I didn't audit it because I trusted him. Willful ignorance isn't innocence when it's profitable. Grace's words cut. Man, like you never audit the foundations your empires are built on. You just assume if you paid for it, it's yours. You don't ask whose genius you're buying, whose life you're erasing. You just sign checks and take credit. You're right. I don't need you to agree with me. I need you to fix it. I'm trying. Jonathan's hands shook. I confronted Thornton. He has legal defenses prepared, witness statements, documentation, a paper trail proving the research was departmental, not individual. If I pursue this publicly, he'll bury MedTech in litigation. The Turner Protocol's patent gets challenged. FDA approval question. My cancer division collapses. Thousands lose jobs. And your legacy becomes fraud. Grace finished coldly. So you came here to tell me what? That fixing your mistake cost too much? That my erasure is acceptable collateral damage? No, I came to tell you I'm going to fix it anyway. Jonathan pulled out papers, legal documents. I don't care what it costs. You get public credit, medical license restoration, research funding, everything. Grace didn't reach for the papers. Why? Because it's right. You've had 3 years to do what's right. Why now? Because I met you, Jonathan said simply. Because the invisible waitress I patronized turned out to be the genius I built my empire on. Because I've spent my life chasing legacy. And it turns out my legacy is someone else's stolen dream. There's something else you need to know. Jonathan's voice cracked. My late wife, Margaret. She died 12 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. The same one killing me now. Grace waited. She was a cancer researcher. Brilliant. Passionate about saving lives. Jonathan pulled out a photo. A woman with kind eyes. Grace's age in the picture. She spent her career trying to develop immunotherapy protocols. The work that would eventually save others from what she couldn't beat herself. Understanding hit Grace like cold water. Your entire MedTech cancer division was built in her memory, trying to save others from what I couldn't save her from. Jonathan's eyes were wet. The Turner Protocol, your protocol, has saved 2,847 lives in 3 years. It's doing what Margaret dreamed of doing, what she died trying to accomplish. The cruel irony of it settled over them both. Grace's stolen research had become Margaret Whitmore's legacy, had saved thousands in the name of a woman who never knew her, had achieved Grace's dream of making a difference while erasing her completely. Your research became my wife's legacy. And I didn't even know your name. Jonathan's voice broke. I built a monument to her on the foundation of destroying you. Grace felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness. She wasn't ready for that. But understanding. Complex, painful understanding. She couldn't fully hate him. The outcome was good. Lives saved, futures extended, families kept whole. Her work had done exactly what she'd hoped. But the process was evil. The erasure was unforgivable. Good outcomes didn't justify destroyed people. How many? Grace whispered. How many lives has the Turner Protocol saved? 2,847 confirmed. More in ongoing trials. Grace closed her eyes. 2,847 people alive because of her work. 2,847 families who didn't know her name. 2,847 second chances built on her first chance being stolen. I want to save lives, she said quietly. That was always the goal, but I wanted to be known for it. I wanted Lily to see her mother change the world. I wanted my name attached to something that mattered. It is Turner Protocol. Turner isn't me anymore. It's a brand divorced from person. Nobody knows Dr. Grace Turner saved them. They think your company, your money, your vision did it. She opened her eyes. You asked me once if I'd undo a mistake knowing it would erase the good that came after. Here's my answer. I wouldn't undo the research. Those 2,847 people deserve their lives. But I won't pretend the theft was acceptable just because the outcome happened to be good. Grace walked to the diner's back room, opened her locker, pulled out a leather-bound notebook, worn, pages filled with handwriting, dates going back 15 years. She placed it on the table between them. My original research journal, every experiment, every hypothesis, every breakthrough, all dated, all documented, all predating everything Thornton submitted. Jonathan stared at it like it was sacred scripture. I've kept it for 3 years, not because I knew I'd use it, because I couldn't let the truth disappear completely. Someone had to know it was real. Grace's voice was steady now. This is what you'll give to your lawyers. This is what proves the timeline. This is the evidence that destroys Thornton and restores my name. What did you want me to do with it? I want you to do what's right, even though it costs you everything. Grace leaned forward. I want you to publicly credit me, restore my medical license through your legal team, fund my return to research, a proper lab, proper resources, proper recognition. Done. All of it. I'm not finished. Grace's eyes were fire. More than money or credit, I want you to know. I want you to sit with the knowledge that the nobody waitress you pitted was the genius who built your legacy. I want you to carry that for every one of your remaining days. I want you to understand that invisible people are only invisible because people like you don't bother to look. Jonathan broke, not pretty crying, raw grief, the kind that comes from realizing you've wasted your life on the wrong things. I have 22 days left. I can't undo this, but I can start. I don't need your savior complex, Grace interrupted. I don't need you to rescue me. I need your signature on documents that tell the truth. I need your power used correctly for once. I need you to move aside and let me reclaim what was always mine. Tell me what you need. Public statement crediting the research correctly. Legal pressure to fire Thornton. No golden parachute. Medical license restoration. Research funding. And she paused. I don't want Thornton destroyed. I want him irrelevant. Grace's smile was sharp. The best revenge isn't ruining your enemy. It's becoming who you were meant to be while they watch from the sidelines, powerless and forgotten. Jonathan looked at her with something like awe. You're extraordinary. I know, That's not arrogance. It's fact. Grace picked up her research journal. I'm a genius. I've always been a genius. Being invisible didn't change that. It just made people stop looking. I see you now. Good. Don't look away. Grace handed him the journal. You have 22 days. Use them to matter for the right reasons. Jonathan took the journal with trembling hands, looked at the woman who'd served him meatloaf while changing the world, and understood that redemption wasn't something you earned. It was something you did, even when it cost everything you'd built. 3 weeks passed like controlled demolition. Jonathan used every remaining day executing Grace's restoration. MedTech board meeting. Day 15 of his remaining life. Jonathan walked in with legal files, evidence, and nothing left to lose. The Turner Protocol was stolen, he said, without preamble. Dr. Richard Thornton appropriated Dr. Grace Turner's research, falsified documentation, and sold it to us as his own work. I have proof. I'm demanding immediate credit correction and Thornton's resignation. Thornton stood. This is preposterous. Also, with what defense? I have her original research journals, digital forensics, proving the timeline, witness testimony from Johns Hopkins faculty who remember the theft. Your paperwork is fabricated, Richard, and we both know it. The board looked at Jonathan, dying, authoritative, unmovable. If you don't act, Jonathan continued, I'll go public. Every news outlet. Full exposure. MedTech's flagship treatment built on stolen research. Your stock will collapse. But more importantly, you'll deserve it. Thornton was forced to resign. No golden parachute. No references. Just exit and silence. The press release went out that afternoon. MedTech Innovations acknowledges that the Turner Protocol was developed by Dr. Grace Turner during her tenure at Johns Hopkins University. The research was acquired through third-party error, and Dr. Turner's contributions are now formally recognized. MedTech apologizes for this oversight and is committed to rectifying this injustice. Grace's medical license was reinstated. Jonathan's legal team had proven the evidence tampering in her original case, the fabricated complaints, the systematic destruction of her career. Jonathan established the Turner Whitmore Cancer Research Foundation, $500 million endowment. Grace Turner named as scientific director. His final move surprised everyone. He named Rachel Whitmore as executive director, forced his daughter to work with Grace, to see firsthand the woman he'd wronged, to build something beyond ego together. Old Joe the trucker attended the press conference, tears streaming down his weathered face. That's my Gracie, he told reporters. Told you she was special. Emma, the teenage waitress, hugged Grace after the announcement. You showed me intelligence doesn't have a uniform. Thank you. Dr. Sarachin offered Grace her old lab at Johns Hopkins, newly renovated, fully funded through MedTech partnership. Come home, Dr. Turner. We have work to do. Rachel Whitmore approached Grace privately after the press conference. I owe you an apology. Rachel's voice was quiet. I judged you by your circumstances. I assumed you wanted something for my father. I was wrong about everything. You were protecting him, Grace said simply. I understand that. You gave my father something to die proud of. Truth. Purpose beyond money. Rachel's eyes were wet. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry for everything I said. Grace nodded. Your father is using his final days to do what's right. That's his gift to you, showing you what integrity looks like when it costs everything. Rachel wiped her eyes. The foundation. Will you really work with me? If you're ready to work with someone who used to serve your father coffee. I'm ready to work with someone who's changing the world, Rachel corrected. The rest doesn't matter. Jonathan attended one board meeting of the Turner Whitmore Foundation before he became too weak. He watched Grace present research proposals, command a room, reclaim her authority. Watched Rachel Listen Learn grow. 19 days left, then 15, then 8. His legacy was no longer buildings or billions. It was truth. Finally, expensively, necessarily, and the invisible woman who taught him that mattering meant seeing others matter more. Dr. Grace Turner stood in her new lab at Johns Hopkins. State-of-the-art equipment, research team of 12, funding that didn't require justification or begging. Her name on the door, her work in her hands again. Lily visited after school, backpack slung over one shoulder, doing homework at the research table where her mother once worked. "Mom, what's checkpoint inhibitors?" Grace smiled, explained, watched her daughter's eyes light up with understanding. This was everything she'd dreamed of, everything she'd thought she'd lost forever. But Grace still worked one Sunday shift per month at Maple Grove Diner, not hiding, not out of obligation, honoring, remembering who she'd become in the wilderness. The survival skills invisibility had taught her, the strength born from having nothing. She was different now, confident but scarred, successful but not naive, powerful but cautious. Therapy was helping. Dr. Patel, twice a week, untangling 3 years of trauma. "You saved lives while being erased," Dr. Patel said. "That's heroism and tragedy existing simultaneously. Give yourself permission to feel both." Grace did. She felt pride and rage, victory and grief, justice and loss, all of it at once, forever. The Turner Whitmore Foundation funded 17 other researchers whose work had been stolen or erased. Grace's new purpose, making sure invisible brilliance got seen. She created a hotline, a legal fund, a support network, janitors with engineering degrees, security guards with PhDs, delivery drivers who were once architects. Grace found them, restored them, gave them back their names. When men in expensive suits entered her lab now, Grace still flinched, just for a second. But she didn't look away anymore. She evaluated whether they were allies or threats, and she had power to respond either way. The $500 tip from Jonathan, that first condescending gesture, was framed on her wall with a note she'd written. The cost of staying silent. The value of speaking up. Never forget the difference. Lily asked about it once. "Mom, who gave you this?" "Someone who didn't see me. Until he did. And then he helped me see myself again." "Is he the billionaire? The one who came to the diner?" "Yes." "Is he alive?" Grace paused. "No, baby. He died. But he died doing what was right." Lily, study the check. "Do you miss him?" "I miss what he represented. The chance to reclaim my voice. But no, I don't miss him. I miss who I was before I needed reclaiming." "But you're that person now." Grace looked at her daughter, 8 years old, brilliant, fierce. "You're right. I am." She smiled. "I'm Dr. Grace Turner. I saved 2,847 lives. And I'm just getting started." The package arrived on a Tuesday. Courier delivery, no return address. Grace opened it in her lab. Inside, a leather journal. Jonathan's confession diary completed. She'd seen pages before, but not the last entry. Written 2 days before he died. Handwriting shaky but determined. "Grace, you asked me to sit with what I'd done. I did. It hollowed me out, carved away everything I thought mattered. The money, the empire, the carefully constructed legacy. But it also filled me back up with something real. I died knowing 2,847 people are alive because of your brilliance. And now everyone knows your name. That's not redemption for me. I don't deserve that. I was complicit in your erasure, willfully ignorant, guilty. But maybe it's justice for you. The foundation is yours. Use it to find more ghosts like yourself. Janitors with genius. Waitresses with world-changing ideas. People society trained us to overlook. Make them visible. Make me irrelevant. That's the legacy I want now, not the billionaire who built an empire, but the man who helped dismantle the systems that kept brilliant people invisible. 2,847 lives saved. Because of you, I hope you save 2,847 more. And I hope you're known for every single one. Thank you for teaching me to see. J. Enclosed in the journal, a photograph of Jonathan's grave marker. It didn't list medtech innovations, didn't mention his billions, didn't catalog his achievements. Just Jonathan Whitmore, husband, father, finally learned to listen. Grace traced the words with one finger, folded the letter carefully, and got back to work. 6 months later, Grace at Maple Grove Diner. Sunday shift. Emma working beside her now, saving for college, studying molecular biology, asking questions Grace finally gets to answer. The bell over the door chimed. A young black woman entered, overdressed for the location, nervous energy radiating from her. She sat in booth 7, Jonathan's old booth. Grace approached. "What can I get you?" The woman looked up. "I'm Dr. Keisha Washington. My research was stolen by my university. I saw your story, the foundation, the way you fought back." Her voice cracked. "Can you tell me how to fight back? How to not disappear?" Grace smiled, not bitter anymore, knowing, "Let me get you some coffee first. Then we'll talk." She poured 2 cups, sat down across from Dr. Washington, and began again.